Magandang hapon po sa kanilang lahat. Chancellor Tan, to the speakers, my fellow speakers. Raisa Robles is here already. Our speaker, Christian Monsod. General Jose Almonte will be following. He's on his way. I'd like to greet also Dr. Flora Angel Braid, one of the commissioners of the Constitutional Commission of 1986, is with us. Former Representative Erin Tanyada, of course, Deans Noel de Dios and Orville Solon. Thank you for hosting this event. And the chairperson of the School of Economics, Maria Joy Abrenica. And again, to the students, and faculty, magandang hapon po sa kanilang lahat. Bago po ako dumating dito, ako po ay galing sa PNP Custodial Investigation, CIDG Custodial Investigation Center, kung saan ay inaresto ang isa sa pinaka-vocal na kritiko ng kasalukuyang administrasyon na si Senator Laila de Lima. Kami po ay naniniwala na kinakailangan maging mapagbantay dahil ang kanyang kaligtasan at kanyang buhay ay maaaring nalalagay sa alanganin dahil sa kanyang pagkakulong. Naniniwala rin tayo na questionable ang kanyang pagkakulong at ang pagsampa ng mga reklamo laban sa kanya. At nakakalungkot isipin na habang tayo po ay nagse-celebrate ng 31 years after the restoration of democracy and after regaining our freedom from dictatorship, ay may kinukulong na isang kritiko. Bakit tayo narito ngayong hapon? Sa gitna ng patayan, sa gitna ng murahan, sa gitna ng pag-iinsulto sa social media, sa gitna ng bangayan, nararapat na tayo ay magpulong, mag-usap. We have to sit down, talk, engage, discern, and hopefully, after discerning, we will find common cause to act. 31 years after the Filipino people kicked out a ruthless dictator, we mark the commemoration of the third day of EDSA People Power. And as I said earlier, with the arrest of the most vocal critic of the President. Nasaan ang People Power ay nag-umpisa noong February 22, 1986. Marami siguro sa inyo ay hindi pa buhay noon. Nasaan ang mga buhay na noon noong Feb 22? Naalala ko yun. Ako'y narito sa UP. Sabado yun. Napabalitang tumiwalag na noong hapon si General Fidel Ramos, Deputy Chief of Staff, at si Minister Juan Ponce Enrile ng Ministro ng National Defense. Tumiwalag na sila. Ako po, narito nga nung umaga ng Feb 22, 1986 sa Diliman. Ako po ang Student Council University Councilor ng panahon na yun. Naghahanda kami para sa mga kilos protesta at civil disobedience campaigns upang tutulan yung naging resulta noong February 7 snap elections na kung saan napakalawak ng pandaraya. It became a norm during those days that campuses were riddled with government agents and military personnel. Ang tawag namin noon, mga te-ahents. Baliktaran lang yun, ahente. Student activists were strictly monitored and sometimes even followed back to their homes. By 1985-86, it was less restrictive, yes, but restrictive still. Because in the earlier, I was in UP in 1981, 10 years after Chancellor Tan entered the university, I entered the university. I remember the stories of those who came before me in the 70s when the Philippine Collegian had to be submitted to the Ministry of National Defense for editing, for censorship. And then ibabalik dito sa UP, ipiprint ng Philippine Collegian maraming blank spaces dahil ipinagbawal yung mga tinatawag na radikal o kaya yung mga anti-government articles. But on that day, Saturday morning, 31 years ago, napansin ko wala nang mga ahente. Naroon ako sa Vinson's Hall, yung dating ahente naka-diver's watch na may hawak na takatak sigarilyo, wala na ron. Yung mga ahente na nasa sasakyan sa labas ng parking lot, wala na rin. Napansin ko na lahat ng mga ahente ng gobyerno na sumusunod sa amin at nagmamatsyag sa aming bawat kilos, nawala, parang bula. At napabalitay, back to barracks daw. Feb 22, 1986. Dahil nga tumiwalag na si Enrile at Ramos at nagkaroon ng loyalty check ang mga sundalo. Hindi biro yung mga panahon na yun. May mga araw hindi ako makauwi ng bahay. Ang tinitimbrehan na kami na magkakaroon daw ng damputan ng mga aktivista. Kaya kami po ay naghahanap ng safe house. Yung tatay ko, nag-graduate din ng UP, civil engineer. Doon po sa bahay namin sa Antipolo, yung isang kwarto, may collapsible floor, yung cabinet. Dahil pag nag-collapse yung floor ng cabinet, ito yung daan papunta sa labas ng bahay. Kung just in case kami po ay damputin ng mga sundalo ng gobyerno, tatakas kami palabas ng kalye. At ang mga sumusunod na araw, matapos ng February 22, ay napabilang sa ating kasaysayan ng mga Pilipino kung saan naipakita natin ang giting at tapang at pagmamahal sa bayan sa pamamagitan ng isang malawakan at mapayapang kilos protesta sa EDSA laban sa diktadura. In an unprecedented feat, and globally, as was mentioned earlier, inspired the revolution or the people's movement in South Africa against apartheid. It inspired the solidarity movement in Poland, whose leader eventually, Lech Walesa, became prime minister. It also inspired the movement for democracy in South Africa at the time when they were still under a dictatorship. Democracy is one of the greatest legacies of EDSA. Democracy and freedom, the restoration of our rights to speak up, to a free press, to freedom of expression. We have become aware of the tremendous power of an active citizenry kapag ang ating mga mamamayan ay sama-samang naninindigan at kumikilos. Kahit sino pa siyang diktador, wala siyang batbat sa taong bayan. Nothing is more powerful than a people united and determined to achieve a particular goal. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. This was a popular Latin American slogan during the 80s, meaning the people united shall never be defeated. And we as the country elected leaders, will remain effective only for as long as we are able to inspire and involve our people. If we want to transform communities, cities, and the entire nation, our people, together with committed leaders with vision and principle, will have to participate. All of us will have to commit and take the risk for our country. That's what we learned in EDSA 31 years ago. Through those post-EDSA years, pockets of people empowerment have emerged. Admittedly, not enough. And more pockets of people empowerment is still necessary. It does not make people empowerment invalid. It does not make people empowerment obsolete. It only makes people empowerment even more necessary because there are still many areas where empowerment has to be achieved. A shining example of people empowerment is the brand of leadership of my dear friend, party mate and colleague, the former DILG secretary and former mayor of Naga City, the late Jesse Robredo. Jesse first became mayor right after People Power. He was only 29 years old in 1988. Inspired precisely by People Power and the desire for change, Jesse had to go against a system of political patronage and a former leadership that was authoritarian. The city had a huge budget deficit. With uninspired and underpaid city government employees, a lethal combination against productivity, and a formula for him to fail. What Jesse did was mostly unheard of during those times. He shared power with the people. He said, and I quote, In some Asian countries, and even in our beloved country, people say that democratic principles cannot work, and that the Oriental model of ruling with a heavy hand is the call of the hour. And he said, "We disagree. Our experiences in Naga is our best argument against the traditional and authoritative ways in the management of people and governance. Our experience too proves that our people are our best resources and our best hope." Nagtiwala si Sec Jesse, si Mayor Jesse sa taong bayan. Collectively, and I quote, he said, "Successful local governments driven by constituencies who are well-informed, wag fake news, constructively engaged, wag puro bangayan, wag puro sisihan, wag puro reklamo, and willing to share the burden of community building, hindi yung nagtuturuan at puro paninisi, can build our country." End of quote. Yung Tagalog pala, quote ko na yun. Jesse made heroes out of ordinary people. He considered and treated the poor people of Naga as partners and assets. Working together, they resolved the long-standing land tenure problems of Naga that dated back to the 50s by launching Kaantabay sa Kauswagan, which means partners in development. Through the program, they were able to provide security of tenure to around 5,000 informal settlers and their families. Its achievement was such that the United Nations Center for Human Settlements made their program a model in 1996 in the Habitats II conference in Istanbul, Turkey. The then city government of Naga also enacted the first of its kind People Empowerment Ordinance that created and institutionalized the Naga City People's Council, which represents more than 100 civil society and government organizations that are able to lobby legislation and vote at the committee levels of the City Council. By the end of Jesse's third term, in 1998, Naga regained its stature as the premier city in the Bicol region. In 1999, Asia Week lauded Naga as the most improved city in Asia by virtue of its investments towards the Nagueños. From a third-class city in 1988, it rose to first-class status in 1990. Social spending rose by more than 100%. Extensive feeding programs for malnourished children and expectant mothers dropped malnutrition from the top 10 leading causes of child death in 1997, where it was 7th place 3 years prior. He was the mayor of and the people, and with the people, always part of the crowd during the translacion of Peña Francia, instead of having a VIP seat as would traditional politicians. In our way, we also work to embody the spirit of EDSA at the national level. When I ran for the first time as senator in 2001, that was right after EDSA II. People Power 2, wherein President Estrada resigned from office after a scandalous being embroiled in a scandal on wetting and other corrupt practices. When we ran in 2001, after EDSA II, our slogan was "Kumilos kasama si Kiko." It did not say si Kiko ang pag-asa ng bayan. It did not say si Kiko ang siyang manunungkulan, etc., etc. It said "Kumilos kasama si Kiko." Believing that only when citizens actively participate in governance, together with committed leaders, can we truly effect change in our communities and our nation. As chairperson of the Senate Committee on Justice in 2001, we mobilized the justice community, the law students, the law schools, the judges and their organizations to push for reforms in the justice system. As such, we were able to double the pay of judges and justices in 2004. We were able to increase the compensation benefits of our prosecutors. We were able to establish an alternative dispute resolution mechanism. We were able to establish the Judiciary Executive, Legislative, Advisory, and Consultative Council, which is composed, by the way, of the President, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the Chief Justice, to address modernizing our justice system. When we were chairman of the Committee on Housing, we partnered with Gawad Kalinga. Gawad Kalinga was only, in 2001, as chairman of the Housing Committee, we sat down with Tony Meloto. By that time, there were only 20 Gawad Kalinga sites outside of Metro Manila. We sat down with him, we partnered with Gawad Kalinga, we provided funding for Gawad Kalinga. After 5 years, there were close to 1,000 Gawad Kalinga sites in the entire country. And again, because we were able to mobilize communities, empower communities to address the problem of community development and housing. Also, during our first term in 2001, we established the search for the 10 Accomplished Youth Organizations, or TAYO. Again, bakit tayo? Dahil hindi ako, hindi sila, hindi kami, kung hindi tayo. Sa pamamagitan ng ating sama-samang pagkilos, tayo ang maghuhubog ng ating kasaysayan, ng ating lipunan. But national politics can sometimes be the stage for political maelstorms, ika nga. Such was the case in 2007. Lines were drawn between ERAP and GMA. ERAP was ousted in 2001. GMA was being asked to resign in 2005 after the Hello Garci controversy. And so these were the two tickets, ERAP and the opposition, and GMA and the administration. And I was to run for re-election. I had asked GMA to resign in 2005 after the Hello Garci controversy, and of course I had asked ERAP to resign in 2000 after the wedding controversy. So where do I go? ERAP or GMA? And I felt in the end, if we were to be true to our convictions, if we were to be true to what we believe is right, we would go neither ERAP or GMA, and we will go to the people. And we did go to the people. We ran an independent run. We did not join the administration. We refused 150 million pesos worth of campaign funds offered by the administration. We also refused the opposition. We trusted people. We went to our organizations. We went back to the communities. Those we partnered in the communities for those 6 years that we were in the Senate, we went back to them. We went back to them and we challenged them that we should come together and move the nation towards a new direction. And thankfully, I won. I was number 5 of 12. It was political suicide, they said, but now I will say it's never political suicide when you trust the people and mobilize the people towards a common objective. Today, we are facing several challenges, obviously. As I said earlier, amidst the killings, amidst the cursing, amidst the controversies, charter change, extrajudicial killings, death penalty, there's so much toxicity. In social media, I would venture a guess, if you're not on Facebook, you must be very happy. Because there is so much toxicity on Facebook. And there's not enough conversation. There's not enough dialogue. There's not enough talking about what is going on. And that's what we have to start doing. That's why we have this forum today. In the end, we realize there are challenges to facing the nation. Under the Aquino administration of 6 years, yes, there were changes. Yes, there were developments. Yes, there was progress. But inclusive growth continues to evade us. 25% of our population continue to remain poor. But anyone will tell you that 6 years of consistency and continuity in policy is not sufficient for us to move our nation towards developed nation status. Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Taiwan, South Korea, they needed 15 to 20 years of consistency in policy, predictability in policy, consistency in ensuring that reforms follow through before they reach developed nation status. Therefore, the challenge to us is, how do we ensure consistency? How do we ensure continuity? How do we ensure that we will be able to move and address the 1/4 of our nation that continues to wallow in poverty? Today, I believe the war on drugs is really and should be refocused, and we go back to the matter of the war on poverty. We must address poverty if we are to be a developed nation if we are to reach developed nation status in the next 15 to 20 years. But it must be through painstaking grassroots organizing, painstaking re-engaging of the communities together to be able to formulate a path towards progress and development. I am certain that the current situation is challenging, the current situation is difficult, but I have children. I have Frankie, who's 16, Casey, who's 31, Miel, who's 12, and Miguel, who is 7. I cannot rest. I cannot keep quiet. I cannot sit still while the challenges of our nation continue to engulf us. For the sake of our children, let us talk, but more than just talking, let us discern. And more than just discerning, let us look to common action so that we can retake the initiative and move our nation towards a new, progressive, and prosperous status and direction. I'm interested to listen to your questions and the interaction later. Magandang hapon po sa kanilang lahat at maraming salamat.